So the other big scandalous thing with regards to Trump, or rather the Trump administration, has been the issue of free speech for pro-Palestinians.
Yeah.
And I use the term pro-Palestinian. Yeah. And that's what they claim to be.
Yeah.
But
don't seem to care very much about the Palestinians who get killed anytime they actually protest or mention or protest against Hamas.
Quite. It's. I think it'd be more accurate to call them pro-Hamas, but okay, let's try and for now. I'll reserve that.
A lot of times at Fire
discussion,
we try to use the term that people prefer to be called.
Yes,
even if it sticks in your.
I prefer to use progressive to work, although you prefer social justice fundamentalism. But they don't say social justice fundamentalism.
Yeah,
they say progressive. So I try and say progressive. But anyway,
that makes sense. Yeah.
The most famous of these is Mahmoud Khalil.
Yeah,
and this was a very interesting case for me about the limits of free speech.
Yeah.
There was a big argument of people saying he had his First Amendment. So the story was that he had been I think a spokesperson for the CUAD, the Columbia University Apartheid Divest group. On their Substack, they had horrific essays written pro-Sinwar, pro-Hezbollah, pro the Houthis. I read through it. I'm like, I can't believe this is coming out of an American university. And they obviously were organizing a lot of the protests. And this guy was not an American citizen.
Yeah.
And so then there was an argument about, does he have First Amendment rights?
Yeah.
And then there's another part of the American legal code, I think it's the U.S. Code 8, saying that the Secretary of State, in this case Marco Rubio, has the right to deport anyone he wants.
There's two different versions of that code.
Do they contradict each other? Or?
No, actually, one actually says that you can kick someone out if it's adverse to foreign policy. The other one just says you can kick someone out.
Right. And so where do you land on that? Was this a violation? Was what happened to Mahmoud Khalil a violation of free speech? Does he have First Amendment rights as a foreign national?
Yeah. Oh, we believe he does. And
you believe he does?
For the same reasons why. So for example, the comedian we were just talking about, Graham, Linehan. He was in the United States in order to actually, avoid some of the potential of arrest in the UK.
That's not accurate.
Well, my understanding is he was.
He made the tweet in April. Mm-hmm. It's not clear to me whether or not he was in the States. And he had moved to the States because of a job. He's working with Rob Schneider, the famous comedian there out of Arizona. He's working with Andrew Doyle, who you were on his show you mentioned earlier, and Martin Goulet, a couple others.
Yep.
And they are working on a new sitcom out there. He moved to America not to avoid anything that's going on in Britain.
Is he working on Andrew Doyle's sitcom?
Yes, he is.
Oh my God.
They're writing that together.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah. So that's why Linehan was in the States, not to avoid anything, just for.
Well, I knew he was here for other reasons as well, but I thought that was at least part of it. But anyway, so basically,
maybe you're right.
Whether it's Jordan Peterson, whether it's the late great Christopher Hitchens, whether it's my own parents, whether it's Graham. Essentially, like the idea that the Secretary of State would have an unreviewable power to kick out any citizen for doing something that would be protected speech in the United States should give civil libertarians issues. And there is a case on point called Bridges v. Wixon from 1945 that specifically deals with people who are foreign nationals who are in the United States and whether or not you can kick them out for speech that would be protected under the First Amendment. And the answer was no. That essentially First Amendment does actually apply, at least to some degree, to foreign nationals. Now, that does not mean anything as ridiculous as you can't consider whether or not you don't have a subjective analysis on why you grant the visa in the first place, or why you actually will give someone a green card, for example. And I think I just absolutely accept that they're going to do that. I mean, I always make the point that my Russian father losing his spot in line to someone who was actually like, oh, I must overthrow the Soviets, to a person who's like, actually, I love your country, it would be ridiculous. But once they're here, kicking them out for speech that would be protected is problematic, I think, for very real reasons. And what's interesting here is the only time those provisions in the American law have been challenged in court, they were found to be too broad and vague by Trump's sister, who was a very well-respected judge who died tragically a couple of years ago, pretty young. So that was found to be too much unreviewable power to give to the Secretary of State. And unfortunately, that decision was overturned for reasons completely unrelated to that decision. So the only time that provision has been challenged. Meanwhile, one of the reasons why the Trump administration and a lot of people, actually not just the Trump administration, a lot of people, Jews on the left as well, were really mad about what Columbia was doing, was that they were refusing to expel students who had engaged in behavior that should have gotten them expelled from Columbia because they didn't want them to lose their visas. Because if you get expelled, you have to go back to your country. So I was kind of holding my breath on the Mahmoud Khalil thing, expecting at any minute they're going to say that he did something more than be associated with a group that says horrible things, but it never happened. And so if that's all and I was like,
right, you thought he must have done something,
that
maybe they know something, but that evidence
never happened.
Right.
And the even worse and clearer case was a case involving a tough student named Ramazan Ozturk. And that was a case where literally all she did was write an op-ed, not a bomb-throwing op-ed, by the way, saying something I disagree with, but that Tufts should divest from Israel. That's a perfectly protected opinion. She was the one that you saw stuffed into the van, flown to, I think, first Georgia and then I think Louisiana, held essentially in jail for weeks until a judge actually said, no, you can't kick someone out of the country for an op-ed. It's not at least who we're supposed to be. So I get that this is, like a difficult topic. I don't have sympathy, for students who have any soft spot for, Hamas whatsoever. But at the same time, the law saying that if someone's here and they're engaging in speech that would be protected for an American, deporting them immediately for that is something that doesn't fit for a country that is proud of the fact that our dissidents come here, like people who from all over the world come here. And I try to remind conservatives, it's like, think about, like a case like Graham or Jordan Peterson or something like that for a future administration and how this power would be used under like an AOC administration.
So my problem with that, Greg, is that if the Secretary of State or indeed America doesn't have control of who is and is not in their country, if they don't have the ability to remove people who are not American citizens, then they don't actually have control of their borders. And so it seems to me pretty important, and this would apply to my country just as much, is that if you don't have that power, then you don't have borders. And so it seems quite fundamental to me. Now, the second case you gave, I grant, it doesn't really necessarily apply to this, but with Mahmoud Khalil, he was supporting the CUA, the Columbia University Apartheid Divest Group, which was openly supporting enemies of America. Well, not just enemies of Israel, enemies of America. Hezbollah, if you read their manifesto, they are explicitly anti, not just Western, and not just anti-Israel and anti-Zionist, they are anti-American. And so if you have people in America who are not American citizens, who are supporting part of organizations that are supporting anti-American activity, if America loses the ability to get rid of these people who are effectively adversaries of the state, it loses itself as a country, it seems to me.
But that's why you have that subjectivity on granting the visa in the first place. And I think what you're saying is Mahmoud Khalil should not have been granted a student visa.
No, but he started that behavior after he came here. And not only that, when you apply, and I know this because I'm a British citizen, I'm not an American citizen, but I've had visas here my entire adult life. I know that when I come here, I better be on best bloody behavior and not break the law, because otherwise they have every right to get rid of me. And fair enough, if I break the law here, they should be able to take me.
But Khalil didn't break the law.
Well, he didn't break the law because you can legally... I guess I suppose he didn't.
I'm all for kicking people out of the break law, to be clear. Like, and although I'd be sad to see my parents go, if my dad actually robbed a liquor store or something like that, yeah, he would have gotten kicked out back when he had his green card. So that's why I was expecting them to, because there was so much, there was a lot of illegal behavior at Columbia, which was why I was kind of like, well, maybe they have him on something, more serious. And I'm still extremely puzzled by choosing someone that they didn't have something more serious on. And there have, by the way, been other deportations that Fire hasn't objected to at all, because it clearly seemed like they were involved in some kind of illegal behavior, or with a strong imposition that they had actual, literal ties to the to foreign terrorism. And in those cases, we're like, no, that's not so much a free speech issue. But when you can only point to speech that you're associated with, or speech that you wrote yourself, I wouldn't want you to get kicked out for your commentary here.
I think your criticism of my position is totally fair. The only thing I would say is that if a government decided that they deemed, let's say, Jordan Peterson's words, or even mine, was against American, and they decided not they decided I should be banished from America, I might be like, this is a bit silly, but I'd be like, it's not my country, it's their country. They can say, I respect their borders. I respect that democracy in America elected these people to make these decisions. Why? I'm not going to argue this.
Well, I'd defend you.
Very good. Thanks for watching this clip from The Winston Marshall Show. You can click here to watch the full episode, and for more clips like this one, don't forget to subscribe. And as always, be well.